It's very easy to be labelled an angry black man. It's very easy to be labelled crazy. You do reach a point where you've had enough and you either want to give up or do something about it.
Well, he made his mark on the game of AFL football, and it's a pleasure to have him with us tonight. Please welcome Héritier Lumumba, and please welcome later back to the panel. Lumumba, great to see you. It's been a while since we had you on the show, a couple of years.
2009, I think.
Yeah, and who's counting here? But
Well, it was actually one of the highlights of my career, so...
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, great, awesome. Now, let's talk us through. You've made a brand new documentary. It was screened on the weekend on SBS on demand, and it's called Fair Game. Now, it looks like you've been making the documentary over a period of a few years. How did it come about, and why did you make it?
So, so the documentary has been made over 6 years, so a significant amount of time to dedicate to a project. The reason why I chose to be the subject of the documentary was because I respected the filmmaker, for one, and two, I was going through a period in my life where I was asking a lot of questions about myself and a lot of questions about the world around me. And the documentary filmmaker, Jeff Daniels, who, as I mentioned, he is a great filmmaker. He saw that what I was going through would be worthwhile to capture on film. Now, some of the questions that I was asking myself were, why is the world the way it is? Why is it that everywhere I go in this world, people who are considered black are at the bottom of society? What I mean by at the bottom, why are they in poverty? Why are they ridden with disease? Why are they why are they in situations where crime is a factor in the communities? Everywhere I was going, whether it was in Central Australia or Brazil or throughout the continent of Africa or North America, the same things were happening. And so I was asking myself these questions, and the answers I was getting were answers that were transforming the way in which not only I was seeing the world, but the person that I was and I am to this day.
Now, there's heaps of very powerful moments in this film, and the one thing that was big news in Melbourne this week was how you described your run-in with Nathan Buckley after an incident and the club, and you felt you were treated with a bit of disrespect and you thought that the club was mocking you. Let's just take a look at the clip from the documentary.
Come with me. I walked into his office, I didn't even shut the door. I said, are you f***ing serious? You are an insensitive f***. I said, you know what, you're he goes, shut the door, and I just slammed the door. Your problem is you're a fantastic coach. You're one of the greats of the game. You have this fantastic football knowledge, but you lack sensitivity and you lack emotional intelligence.
Now, that's pretty powerful stuff there to be talking about the coach, and some people say, oh, why is he talking out of school there about the coach and your time at Collingwood? But what's your relationship with Nathan Buckley like now, as it stands?
Well, my relationship with Nathan Buckley, I must begin by saying that he was the captain of the football club when I arrived at Collingwood, and then obviously he transitioned into being my coach. We had a relationship where we had a level of understanding about one each other that transcended football, and we got to know each other as human beings. But I have to say that relationship was tarnished because of a lack of understanding. And that lack of understanding is around the issue of racism and how I was affected in my time at the football club. And so I also have to make point that he is not one person to isolate in this. What I found in my whole time in football, but also throughout Australia, is that the level of understanding on racism is probably to the level of a kindergarten level, really, in terms of in terms of being able to understand what racism is and how to deconstruct it. So he's not one person to isolate, but my relationship with him was definitely tarnished because of a lack of understanding.
Héritier, you spoke about in your documentary, and it's a wonderful documentary, you spoke about the microaggressions and the misconduct, over 10 years during your time at Collingwood, but you also made a point of saying that Australia has a poor record when it comes to race relations as well. So what was the microaggressions and the misconduct over 10 years at created the blow up, which ended up you moving from Collingwood to Melbourne?
Well, the microaggressions that I refer to within the Collingwood Football Club were centralised around jokes and racist jokes, and also a racist nickname that lasted for 9 years until I found enough courage and I learned about how to confront this, and stood up and confronted it. It was a culture that normalised these jokes. It wasn't necessarily, again, I'm not here to isolate any individuals, so that's not what it's about. It's about highlighting a culture that not only the Collingwood Football Club is a part of, but this whole country is a part of. And it's a culture that is also part of a global system that I mentioned, the places where I've travelled and all over the places in the world, that the system of racism, white supremacy, is something that affects people to a level of genocide. And that's what's happening to people here in this country, and that's what's happening all around the world.
Can I just ask you one about, I was really taken with that grab about the conflict with Nathan Buckley, and you used the phrase emotional intelligence. And given that there's been a lot of speculation about Nathan's place as Collingwood coach, it made me think about what are the qualities that are most important for a senior coach. And the more I think about it, the more I think emotional intelligence, that capacity to read the psyches of your playing list,
just have empathy,
is probably more important than ever. And I've got to say, I remember when that incident happened, to be honest, not necessarily having a great deal of sympathy for you. After I saw your explanation of it and saw the context around it, I completely changed my view. So do you think a quality like that is as important for an AFL coach as anything else?
Absolutely. I think one of the key qualities that any leader should have is the ability to harbour or foster empathy for others. And given the fact that Nathan was a first year, second year coach at the time that this happened, that was definitely an area of development for him.
H, tell me about the name change for me. For all of us, I suppose, now, obviously. Changed your name. What was the reason behind that?
Well, I frame it more as that I reclaimed my birth name. So I was born with the name Héritier Lumumba. That was changed when I was 9 years of age. Oh, wow. And so it was a matter of me reclaiming that name. And it's a process of decolonisation that I'm going through. I come from a people who were colonised and enslaved for centuries. And in that process of colonising and enslavement, our names were taken from us. Our religions and spiritual practices were outlawed and taken. We had to endure violence and some of the worst crimes against humanity. And in the process, our identities were taken. So I have a huge connection to the plight of the Indigenous people of this land, because I also come from an Indigenous people in two lands, both on my mother's lineage in South America and also in the Congo and the continent of Africa. So me being able to reclaim my birth name is me decolonising my mind. It's a symbol of power and it's a symbol of resistance.
Well explained, beautifully done.
Well said. Look, Héritier, great to see you, brother, and well said there. And look, first of all, for me, when I hear, I haven't seen the documentary, but I've seen a bit of it. But when I look at it, I just see the word powerful straight away, and I see the word brave, and I see you very brave for coming out to say what you've come out and said, because as we know in the AFL football world, it's very hard to come out and say things like that, and it's all about education. So well done, first of all, for coming out and saying what you said, and but even just to talk about finding yourself away from footy as well. Being an Aboriginal person, I can relate to you in a lot of ways. My father was a stolen generation. I haven't got time to talk about all this because I'll be here for 1 year by the time I finish talking, but when I retired football, I retired for the wrong reasons. I retired because my father got taken away, and what happened with me, I went back looking for where he was buried and born and all this sort of stuff. A lot of people don't know that. I did it. At the time, I didn't know what I was doing, and all of a sudden you get back into the industry and you're doing what you're doing, and for you to come out and say this, what What do you personally want to see from this? What do you want to what do you want to see come out of this? Life after footy? Clubs to change their attitudes toward? Because I'll tell you right now, I'm a realist. There's racism in AFL. I don't care what anyone says. Whether we like it or not, we've got them at clubs. What do you want to see come out of this?
Well, thanks, brother, and I've got to say I commend your honesty, and that's what's needed, is for people to be honest about this. On people who are a part of, on the side of the oppressor, and the people who are also being oppressed by racism. And what I would like to see personally, the reason why I'm in the position where I'm speaking my truth, is because I'm looking to affect the hearts and minds of the people who are being oppressed, the people who don't have a voice, the people who are still caught in a cycle that is dehumanizing them. And so
are you doing this for them and for you?
Well, to me, it's not about me. To me, it's about honouring the fight that my ancestors fought for my freedom today, and understanding that that freedom is still not won. If you look at the statistics, you know, brother, you know, but for people that don't know, just look into the statistics that affect Indigenous people in this country, in terms of the incarceration rate, in terms of the life expectancy, in terms of youth suicide. This is a genocide that's still going. It's still going, and it's not being recognised. And so what I'm interested in doing is I'm interested in affecting the hearts and minds of people who are being affected by this, and can find the courage to put pressure on a system that needs to have pressure put onto it.
But what do you, what do you say to people who may be watching tonight? And I see a lot of times when Indigenous people speak out, or someone like yourself speak out, they don't like to hear these sorts of comments that come out, and they might call you a flog, or why are you bringing all this stuff up? What do you say to people like that? Is there a lack of ignorance on their behalf, or what do you say to those sorts of people?
Well, it's interesting. There's three different positions people take when they would try to reject an idea that's foreign to them. One position is denial and dismissing, and that's what the Collingwood Football Club essentially did by downplaying what I went through. The other one is silence. That's what the AFL did. They've still remained silent on this issue, even though they're well aware that I went through 9 years of this until I had to stand up. And then there's people that lash out and just attack whatever you're saying. And what you call that is called cognitive dissonance. And that's what takes place. And so I'm not interested in wasting my energy trying to convince those people to change their mind. I'm interested in focusing my attention on the people who need the attention, the people who are trying to survive this genocide that's taking place.
Do you think the media plays a part in this? Because it was interesting. One of the things that shone through in the doco is that they were very, and I'm part of the media, I feel guilty about this in a way, the media is very happy to sort of build up characters in the game. But it seems to me when they're non-Anglo-Saxon characters and they're non-typical, it's tokenistic, but it also, when those people start to sort of speak up, and Adam Goodes is a great example, they're very quickly put back in their place, and it's like the whole mood turns on them.
Yeah, because you're not allowed to say anything, because it's one in all in here. You've got to be careful what you say, and I've been down that track in Adelaide and in the AFL.
Well, did you feel like that happened with you?
Yeah, and the way I'll answer that is just by asking you a quick question. With the AFL media, what is the representation of people of colour in the AFL media?
None.
Very little.
Very little. Would it be numbers to suggest that there's a dominant group that operate and control the media?
There's no doubt. It's very middle class. It's very white. It's very Anglo-Saxon.
Exactly, and that's a dangerous thing. I'll tell you why it's a dangerous thing. Is because the humanity of people like myself, people of colour, will be dismissed. And that's exactly what happens, is that when there's a lack of representation in any group, whether it's in the AFL Commission or whether it's in leadership at levels of football clubs, or if it's in the media, what happens is that you get one particular view that isn't in touch with the views of the minority. And that's what the dangerous thing is. So absolutely, but
they're given a view of something that I don't know anything about.
Exactly right, and that's the thing. That's the...
It's an education process.
It is. It's a process of education, and I would say that to the people who need to be educated, they need to understand who they are in terms of their history.
Yep.
And I'm talking about people who, I guess, who you would consider white Australians, need to understand exactly what their history is, because their history has been whitewashed, it's been distorted, and it's been denied and hidden to fit a certain narrative, and that's to the detriment of people like us.
Yep. On that note, Harry, we're going to have to let you go here to you. And Lumumba, thanks for coming on tonight. Put your hands together, folks. For Héritier Lumumba. You had a good career as well, mate. And let's not forget about that, Gil.
That's right, he's had a great career.
You got the leadership at Melbourne and at Colin. But we're going to go to this week's edition of Footy Stalwarts.